first time skiing in 22 years, which really I'm sort of dating myself by saying something like that. But I was a young buck back then, and I'm not so much a young buck anymore. So to say that I've been feeling it today would be an understatement. Welcome to MASL Monday, everyone. I'm Alex Bastiavansky. Hope everyone had just a fantastic weekend. And how could you not with all the great games that went down? And joining me today to help me talk about this is the broadcaster extraordinaire for the Florida Tropics, Brian Ackley. How you doing, Brian?
Alex, great to see you again. And I think we're all on MASL overload after, 11 games and in 2 days, 3 overtimes alone yesterday. It was as good a weekend as I can remember in the MASL in a long time.
And the schedule really getting underway after the first couple of weeks of fairly quiet, but really getting underway last weekend, and some real fantastic contests. And just apologies to everyone right off the bat here if it's a little bit dark. I am on the West Coast. The sun has not come up yet. Brian's in the Sunshine State. He's 3 hours ahead of me. He's got lots of sunshine there. So the sun will come up and it will brighten here as we go along. But let's talk about your Tropics, of course, making the final last year. Hard-fought series against San Diego, going down, though. That was the ultimate goal last year, of course, was getting back to that final, winning that championship game. The goal remains the same for you guys this season, but your season kicked off against a very difficult Baltimore Blast team, 7-6. It was a close one. First, just tell us about your thoughts on that great contest.
Yeah, it's been an interesting preseason for the Tropics. I think it's been as intense as any of the preseasons, if not the most intense the Tropics have had, mainly because they know specifically that the early season schedule is very tough. 3 out of 4 against Baltimore to open with the one on the road, and then 2 coming up after the home opener against Utica. So not only are there quality opponents, but divisional opponents that they know that they're going to have to compete against and beat to win the East. So, a really important win for the Tropics, just kind of set the tone for the month of December, which is a busy one.
And some big performances we need to talk about. Let's start with the first star from the game for your Florida Tropics. Dr. Ruggles himself, I like to call him Drew Ruggles. 4 points in the contest, gets the hat trick from a D-man too. I mean, is there anything this guy can't do? MASL Defender of the Year, I believe it was back in 2019-20.
Right.
But putting up 4 points in the opening game is just unreal, isn't he?
To answer your question, no, there isn't anything he can't do. And he reminds me a little bit of Ichiro Suzuki in baseball. Baseball people would say Ichiro could hit 35 or 40 homers in a season if he wanted to, but he chose not to. He chose to be a 300 hitter or a 330 hitter and not concentrate on the power. Drew is kind of the same way. I think Drew Ruggles could score 30 goals in a season in this league if he really wanted to and dedicated himself to doing that. But he takes great pride, obviously, in his defense as well. And Clay Roberts is 5 guys behind the ball at all costs mentality. And so Drew's not going to score 30 unless somehow he gets up on the midfield. But that's not going to happen. But yeah, he is so dangerous with the ball. I think just in terms of technical skill and pure skill, his raw skills are as good as anybody in the MASL. And then he plays the game with such a joy. He's just fun to be around. He's fun to watch. And when he puts his mind to it, he can be an offensive threat. He had 26 points last year, which I think was 4th on the team in scoring. So he's always going to be on the score sheet, but obviously Saturday was special. And all 3 goals were great goals. The first one from the top of the box, kind of a rebound, a difficult angle, or not an angle, but a difficult height to the ball that he got to. And then just 2 laser beam finishes, including what was ultimately the one that kind of gave the Tropics breathing room there. A restart from Victor Pereira's, and Drew showed some patience and took the extra roll and got a little better angle on Venzela and just drilled it. So,
and we'll talk about his goals a bit more.
Game.
We're going to feature one of his goals for sure in our favorite goals of the week. I love the Karate Kid goal, as I call it, where he went up and I mean, just great player, over a point per game last season, as you mentioned. Victor Pereira is picking up where he left off last year as well. 3 points, and I'm sure it's easy to predict that Victor's going to have another big season for the Tropics.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you could win a few bar bets around the league if you were to ask people who the second leading scorer in the entire MASL was last season, and the answer is Victor Pereira. He had 52 points last year, 29 goals, 23 assists. He was just he was all world, and really maybe even a sneaky MVP candidate if he has again the kind of year he had last year. His game really blossomed. He's always been very good, but he was kind of the wingman for several seasons to Ricardo Dieguez, who went off to Utica. And when that happened, Victor's game just went to a different level. He's a captain, so he leads by example. And instead of just being kind of a playmaker, he became a goal scorer as well. Deadly on the restarts and a very quiet leader, but very much a do as I do, not as I say kind of leader. And the Tropics kind of go as Victor Pereira's goes.
We're going to talk about Baltimore in a second. I do just want to touch on Lucas Roque's performance. Of course, he was the MASL Offensive Player of the Week for Week 1. He's on another planet right now. The way he's playing, 4 points yesterday, 4 goals yesterday, and some absolute beauties in there. But Roque's play, I mean, right now he's a front runner for MVP. I mean, we're only a couple of weeks in, of course, and everything's going to get going. But my God, this guy's been phenomenal, hasn't he?
He's always been very good, and he is next level good right now. And I think there might be a reason for that. Hard to know for sure, but there's no Vinnie Dantas in Baltimore anymore. He came to Florida as a free agent, which was a great pickup for us and a tough loss for Baltimore. But kind of the way Victor bloomed as a goal scorer and huge presence in Florida when he lost his big running mate in Ricardo Dieguez, I think maybe Lucas kind of looked around and said, "Hey, we just lost a guy that's going to score 25 or 30 goals for us this season, and somebody's got to kind of step up and fill that void." And Roque certainly has the experience and the talent to do that. So I think maybe it's given him a little more space, if you will, metaphorically at least, to create offensively and become maybe the next superstar in this league. True, like I said, he's always been really good. I think
But now he's the focal point of that offense, and he has a chance to truly shine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 26 goals last year, and he's already, more than a third of the way to that here already. So he may be the new superstar in the league this year.
Let's talk about Dantas for a second, because as you mentioned, the Tropics did pick him up. Obviously, a huge pickup getting the big Brazilian. What is Vinnie going to add to that already stacked roster this season?
Well, basically, he becomes the replacement for Ricardo Dieguez, because when Ricardo came over from Utica in that trade midseason, it's like he never left. He was brilliant and especially good in the playoffs. And, Vinnie is probably one of the top 5 target forwards in the league with his size and, his ability to get shots away in tight spaces. He was close a couple of times against Baltimore. I know he didn't get a goal. I think he did pick up an assist, but he is going to be tremendous in terms of restarts. He's got such a good shot, man advantage unit. I expect him to see a lot of time down low. He's just a guy that fits the Tropics offensive philosophy. This team regularly is near or at the top of goals scored in the league. And so without having Ricardo on board, Vinnie just basically becomes that target that Ricardo was. And, he's looked great in preseason. I think he's in good shape. I think he's in a good mindset, excited to be here, and haven't had a chance to really talk to him that much. I will this week, but it's a guy that is a difference maker, and the Tropics have picked up a few of those during the years.
Yeah, I mean, looking strong once again, that Tropics squad. Let's just talk about Baltimore for 1 second, though, because of course they had a great start to the season, beating Utica at home. I think Utica is going to be a very strong team this year as well. And then they dropped the game to you guys, and then fall to St. Louis as well on the weekend in overtime. I mean, all tough matchups, though. Let's be fair here. But what were your thoughts on the Baltimore Blast from what you saw, and what do you think of them going forward this season?
Yeah, I think their Baltimore Blast during their championship run years in terms of the talent on their roster. I mean, you look up and down their roster. I did that before the game Saturday, and I'm like, yep, good player, good player, good player, good player, great
Yeah,
player, great player. You certainly don't sell any team short with William Vanzela in goal, and Mike Zierhofer's a really competent backup. Probably could start for some teams in this league. It's David Bascom's second year, which I think helps. He's settled in a little bit more. The East is a beast. I think there's six really
yeah,
good teams in the East. I've liked St. Louis more maybe than some right from the start. Milwaukee, I think, is absolutely going to challenge. Kansas City is going to challenge. That's why these games so early in the season for the Tropics are so important. When you get all three of your games against Baltimore out of the way in the first four, and if you can win, if the Tropics could win all three, it would really go a long way towards putting a little separation between those two teams. But I don't think any team, Alex, in the entire MASL this year is going to have a year like San Diego did last year, where they didn't lose in regular time during the regular season. I think there's losses out there for everybody this year. And boy, when you get down into February and March and the playoff chase, I think it's going to be wild. I think it's going to be intense. And there are going to be some good teams that will stay home. So I think they're easily both divisions go 5 or 6 deep in terms of teams that could make really long runs in the playoff. And
yeah.
Baltimore is very near the top of that list.
Let's talk about one of the other teams looking to return to glory and get back to that championship matchup. The Milwaukee Wave, making their debut last weekend. They went 1-1. They dropped St. Louis 7-3, and then go down in overtime to Kansas City. Ian Bennett off to a strong start once again. And first of all, your thoughts on the Wave as they get their season underway. And I know you think that Willie B signing, William Bonahaney, picked up in goal for the Milwaukee Wave from the Harrisburg Heat, is going to be one of the most significant signings of the season in the MASL.
Yeah, I think it might be the most significant transaction in the offseason. Milwaukee's a good team, but with Willie in goal, I think they become a very good, if not potentially great team. You never know how things shake out with injuries and chemistry and things like that. But look, you go back over the history of indoor soccer and certainly the recent history of the MASL, you have to really have a tier one goaltender to win a championship, whether that's Vanzela or Pardo or others. You've got to have a guy that's tier one. And I'm not saying Willie B is quite there yet, because he probably needs a little bit more experience, but he has the athleticism and the skill and the mindset, I think, to be a tier one. And you put a good team like Milwaukee in front of him, and that raises his confidence level and makes him potentially a tier one goalie. And yeah, I think Milwaukee, if Baltimore is back to their kind of glory level in terms of talent on the roster, I think Milwaukee is pretty darn close to that as well. If I had to pick, I would think Florida, Kansas City, Milwaukee, Baltimore could be a dogfight amongst those four. I mean, I'll say we're still the team to beat, just because we have won more games over the last 3 seasons in the regular season than any team in the MASL. So they got to come get us, but it is not going to be easy. And those four for sure, I think, will be in the playoff hunt. But St. Louis, and as you said, Utica, I think, I think the coaching change is big there, and not looking forward to seeing them either.
Let's take a look at the West for a moment here, and both Mexican sides in action this past weekend. And Chihuahua, of course, making their season debut. Chihuahua down the stretch last season arguably was the second best team in the MASL after San Diego. I mean, they were an incredibly tough team. It would have been, you guys up against them, if they'd managed to knock off San Diego in the final as well, would have been fascinating to see. But they are going to be very strong this season. They go into Dallas and beat the Sidekicks 9-6. Enrique Cañas getting the hat trick. But your thoughts on Chihuahua first as they kick off their season?
Yeah, I mean, both Monterey and Chihuahua are just going to be really tough outs all year. I mean, basically, the history of Mexican teams in the MASL is they're really good, and they're so technically skilled. I mean, you watch Chihuahua; they move the ball so quickly and efficiently and effectively. They get into space. You know what you never see from a Chihuahua team is a pass that is more than a half inch off the turf. I mean, it's on a laser line. It's on their teammates' foot in a half a second. I mean, technically, they put the beautiful game in indoor soccer, as far as I'm concerned, and that's kind of what you expect from them. And you're right. I mean, they were almost anybody's equal at the end of the season last year. I think they lost like 6 or 7 to start the season, but once they kind of got all
Yeah.
their guys together and some of that chemistry going, yeah, they were as good as anybody. And so I think what we saw Saturday in Texas was really not a big surprise. They're going to score a lot of goals and win a lot of games this year.
And just a reminder to everyone that, of course, you can watch every single MASL game. You can watch them live. You can watch the archive of all the games this season. MASL on Twitch is the place to go, so you can also see what we're talking about. Of course, if you missed the games this weekend, whole slate of them. Continuing on in that contest that Chihuahua 196, Blas Perez, the former FC Dallas forward, Panamanian international. I believe he got 2 in the contest, but he gets
He
his
did.
first goal in the MASL. What did you think of Blas?
Yeah, I saw a fair amount of that game. I had so many Twitch windows open on my laptop this weekend; it was hard to keep track of them all. But yeah, he's fun. I mean, he's older and bigger, but the reality is, those kind of guys, as we see in this league, can have a lot of success. And I think Blas is one of those. I mean, his second goal was not artistically pretty, but he basically fought through defenders and kind of just redirected it into the goal. His first one was a pretty one, and yeah, he brings kind of a flavor to the game that I think is a lot of fun. And if he can stay healthy, he's obviously going to help the sidekicks, who, again, they finished the season strong after the coaching change last year, and I'm not sure they're quite at the level of, say, San Diego or Chihuahua, but he's going to make Dallas better, and definitely a much more fun team to watch.
For sure. And Monterey taking on Tacoma and thrashing Tacoma 10-3. I think this was the Monterey team that we expected to see against Mesquite, that was held to just a single goal, which still blows my mind that team was only held to a single goal. But goals from 6 different players as well. So really spreading out the scoring on the Flash.
Yeah, I mean, Monterey is going to be very good again. I mean, technically, they're as good as any team in the league, and if they get out quickly, which it looks like they may, it could be at least a 3-team race in the West, and who knows beyond that. I mean, give credit to Mesquite. How good have they been, and how good has Pollo been? I mean, you talk about player of the month. I think they've given up 4 goals in 2 games so far. And that 2-1 result, which now we've had 2 in the last 2 weeks after not having any for for
You're
4
getting ahead. I
years.
was going to bring that up with our next one with Empire in San Diego, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, isn't that crazy? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so.
crazy, but sometimes that happens in indoor soccer. You get it a low scoring game, and it wasn't for lack of chances. I mean, Pollo was great, defense was great in front of him, and so look, Mesquite's out 2-0, and maybe they got something better going there than a lot of people realize too. You get a little confidence in this game, Alex, and boy, things can happen. So we'll see about Mesquite, but yeah, I think you're right about Monterey. That's what we expected in week 1, and I don't think that's the last of their double-digit scoring games by far this year.
Yeah, bouncing back to the East for 1 second. Utica sweeping the weekend series against the Harrisburg Heat. Gordy Gerson getting the game-winning goal on Saturday, and Tim Goldman with the hat trick on Sunday, back in Utica for their home opener. Great crowd on hand too. I love those Utica crowds. They're so into it. But so great weekend for Utica. Do you see big things for the Blues this season? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think they're going to be right there as well. It's kind of like Baltimore. You look down the roster and like, yep, good player, good
Hmm.
player, good player. And Gordy Gerson, if he's healthy, which he looks like he is, if he's in the right mindset, which he looks like he is, I didn't know how much he had left in the tank. The last couple of years have not been Gordy Gerson type years. We had him down here in Florida. He looked great early when we had him, and then he got hurt and never really kind of recovered from that. And
Yeah.
I don't know that much about his season in terms of health last year. Yeah, but he looks like the old Gordy Gerson, and if that's the case, Utica is better for it. The sport is better for it. He's a character, and I mean that mostly in a good way. I always liked Gordy a lot. I thought he was a great addition for us down here when it happened, and a healthy Gordy Gerson makes Utica a dangerous side. And yeah, they're one of the six in the East that absolutely are going to win a lot of games and beat up on each other in the East. You win 15, 16 games in the East this year, you're going to have a very good season. And I mean, Utica could do that and be one of the best teams and still lose 7 or 8 times. But I think that's true of just about anybody in the East.
Yeah. Bounce back to the West for one more game that we'll talk about. And of course, we saved the champs for last. So everyone in San Diego, don't freak out. We're not going to avoid talking about, of course, how could we, the two-time defending champions, 16 times overall, the San Diego Sockers making their season debut against Empire. San Diego taking their opener for the season, 8-5 over the Strikers. Just there's so many deadly options on this squad. And Tavoy picking up where he left off last year, getting a hat trick. Leo de Oliveira, hat trick. Gabriel Costa, 2 goals for Empire. Worth pointing out as well. He's a rookie. Fantastic strike from distance in that contest as well. Sunday, interesting one because, yes, as you mentioned in the last 2 minutes ago, we talked at length about the fact that Mesquite Monterey 2-1 game last weekend was the first 2-1 full-length MASL game since the 2018-19 season. And then we have it 2 weeks in a row. And who would have thought? I mean, Monterey Mesquite, that was a shock. But with the amount of talent on San Diego and Empire featuring Frank Taillou back in the lineup, a 2-1 game. Mind-blowing stuff, but lots of goals on the Saturday and not so much on the Sunday. What was your thought about the 2 contests there?
Yeah, I mean, look, San Diego is definitely still the team to beat until someone or they decide otherwise. It's interesting. I got a chance to interview Rene Ortiz, who's the assistant coach of the Sockers, and he is also their M2 head coach. And just a little plug, we're going to have that interview up on the M2 Facebook page later this week. But, I asked him, I said, beyond the talent, because obviously San Diego gets a lot of talent, what is the one trait that you guys look for in a player or traits that you really look for to identifying a player that tells you that they're going to be a successful player and the kind of player the Sockers want? And he had a really interesting answer, and I won't go into all the details on it, but San Diego is just the consummate indoor program. They won the M2 championship as
Yes.
well last year. They had a couple of guys from that team that moved up to the big team, and yeah, I mean, look, we didn't even mention Craig Childs, who broke hearts here in Florida with just, a shot an inch inside the crossbar and an inch inside the post to win that championship series last year, that 4-3 game in San Diego. They're I don't think going to run the table like they did last year. They'll probably lose a couple. I mean, I think Empire is actually, Alex, a really good roster. You mentioned, what, they've lost 11 in a row now, which is almost incredible. And that's too talented a roster to not pull themselves out of this tailspin. And Perez signing will help. Taillou, of course, didn't play in that first game because of suspension. So, I'm not counting the Empire out at all. There's a lot of talent in Daye, coming over they're going to win some games. And I think that's what I took from Sunday's game in 2-1 into overtime against San Diego. I think is more who Empire really is, and they're going to win more than just a few games this year. They're going to be a factor in the West.
You get the feeling that Empire, maybe it'll be like a Chihuahua thing last year where they lost the first 7 or 8 games, I think it was, and then went on a big run. I don't know if Empire has quite, as much firepower there overall as that Chihuahua team does. But I mean, 8 losses to finish the season last year, just to finish the point you were saying before, to just bomb out of the playoff race. Basically, it was in their hands in the last weekend. And they couldn't make it happen. And now 3 losses to start this season. But I think that once you get Perez in there, of course, Tayu just made his debut after missing that first game, as you mentioned. They've got Mo NDI as well. Huge pickup in the offseason, who was in the top 5, or if not top 10 in scoring last season. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, they are a team that could go on a run. But they got to get this going. I mean, we're talking about 11 straight losses now dating back to last season, and that's got to weigh on their psyche a bit.
I was just going to say, I think mostly it's a confidence thing for them right now. If you can take confidence from a game like Sunday's, maybe they can, because obviously they played very well and took the best team in the league to overtime on their home turf. So,
kept that goal total down too.
Mental.
And kept that goal total down with the amount of, San Diego, 5 guys in the top 15 of scoring last season. I mean, to keep them to only 2 goals is really saying something.
Yep.
We're almost out of time here. Let's talk about your favorite goal from the weekend. Can you pick a couple off the top of your head that you love?
Well, it was tough to keep them. As I said, I had all these windows open on Saturday, but the 2 overtime goals on Sunday for me were the ones that stick out more for the context. I mean, they were good goals, both of them. They weren't cheapies by any stretch. But, look, as fans, we love overtime. I love it, especially when I don't have a vested interest in it. It's great drama. It's great theater. And Stefan Mitovic's goal, love Stefan. He was here in Florida for a bit and really good guy, and a guy that can help the ambush when healthy, and he looks like he's finally healthy, and he had a nice goal in overtime. And then Sousa's blast from the yellow line was just Craig Childs-esque, to go back to that championship series again, just inside the post, just underneath the crossbar. Couldn't have been struck any better from distance. And so just for the thrill and the excitement of having those winners at home for both St. Louis and for Kansas City, for me, were highlights from the weekend.
A Missouri sweep for you.
There you go.
There you go. There's so many that I could name, and there were some fantastic plays. There was a couple that I really liked. The Ruggles karate kick against you guys. Lucas Roque, pick any of them. I mean, he had some real bangers. Some great stuff there. And I loved Timmy Goldman with the hat trick for Utica City. The pass from Segura, I would believe it was, off the boards, and Timmy going in for the diving header to net the hat trick and help lead Utica to victory. But like I said, everyone get on to Twitch, check out those games. Also, MASL TV on YouTube as well has got all the highlights. Check that out. Don't forget, can't help but plug myself and Mondays, of course. Please like, rate, subscribe, tell your friends to come on and watch MASL Mondays. We love having you guys checking it out. And so before I let you go, by the time next Monday's show comes around, we will have a World Cup champion.
Yikes.
Yeah. So semis are going tomorrow and Wednesday.
Right.
And then the final goes on Sunday. So I've got to ask the question. Your Americans are unfortunately out, as are my Canadians, but who's your pick now? Who's your pick? Who do you think is gonna pull this out and take the World Cup title?
Yeah, it's I'm no outdoor expert. I mean, I enjoy the World Cup as much as the next guy, and I've watched a lot of the games. I mean, I'm just going to say Argentina, just because I'll pick chalk here, I guess. Morocco is a great story. In this business, you root for great stories, and how fun would it be to see them get through, even if they get through to the finals, even if they didn't win it. But maybe sentimentally speaking, with my heart, you would say Morocco just for the great story. But they play them on the field for a reason, and I'll go with Argentina.
Argentina, the Messi miracle, if they can pull it off. He's really just willing that team to victory right now, isn't it? Just unbelievable play. I admire all the teams that are left in right now. I am part Croatian, so I mean, there's a little bit of a thing there, but I mean, it's my head says France. I mean, it's really tough to bet against the defending champs. Morocco, I love that Moroccan team.
Right.
They're gonna be decimated possibly for the semifinals though, with all the injuries to big players that happened in that quarterfinal game. It's for me though, it's what Croatia was able to do against Brazil.
Impressive.
And I think that Croatian team, that Brazilian team had a lot more firepower overall than that Argentina team did. If Croatia can hold their structure like they did against Argentina, I wouldn't put it past them winning that game. And I think if they reach the final, they will pull it off this time. We could have a rematch, of course, of the final of 18, which would be Croatia, France. And this time I think that Croatia might actually, the last gasp for Luka Modric, taking it. But my heart, I think I would say Croatia, but my head says I think it's going to be very tough for anyone to knock off France.
Yeah, Croatia is kind of like the Tropics, need to take that one last step. They made it, to the finals, as you mentioned, in 18, and that experience may pay off. So, and France, obviously, probably a pre-tournament favorite. So, any three of those teams, I mean, Morocco, as you point out, is the long shot here, but I know we'll all be watching.
For sure. And that's it, man. We are all out of time. But Brian, as usual, just great analysis. Of course, I had you on primetime last year for our playoff preview segment. You always give great insight. And it's going to be fun to watch the Tropics all season. So thank you, buddy, for coming on and being with us on MASL Monday. Really appreciate it.
As always, my pleasure. Love to talk indoor soccer with you. Your toughest question was trying to pick a goal of the week. There were 79 goals on Saturday alone. So I didn't do quite as much homework as I probably should have. I maybe looked at 50 of them, but always great. You do a great job for the league. We appreciate everything you do for the MASL and look forward to every new episode of MASL Monday.
Thanks, buddy. And there's only 24 hours in a day. You don't have time to watch every single game, as you go through it. So, I think unbelievable 79 goals. But, thank you once again. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And as I mentioned before, please don't forget to rate, subscribe, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your friends, everything. Really appreciate the viewership, everyone. We'll see you next week.